What we're gonna do right here is go back, way back into time.
Hey everybody, ReefGrrl here, and welcome to my channel. Well, it's about time I made a video about the aquascape in Crazy Town Reef. Right up front, let me apologize for how this is going to jump around in time, so I hope it's not too confusing. I have over 100 photos and video clips going all the way back to July of 2020. What I hope to show in this video is the process I went through to come up with the final aquascape. I showed you the box at the beginning of the video. Believe it or not, I bought the stuff on Amazon. 40 pounds each of base rock and shelf rock. I just checked and you can still get it for a really reasonable price. This isn't a commercial for Amazon. I'm still surprised that it's available that way, and it shocked me that it was free shipping. I kept the original paper template that I made when I was trying to figure out what the footprint should be for this tank. You can see it here on two tables that we pushed together. I got the rocks straight out of the box, started messing around with them, and this is what I came up with at the beginning. I had a simple list of objectives here. Number one, I wanted to keep the aquascape low enough that I would never have to be concerned about corals reaching the surface of the water when they grew. That had been a problem in the past. Yeah, a little bit of a fail right there. Secondly, I wanted lots of open swimming space for fish, while at the same time also having a lot of places where they could hide and caves that they could swim through, lots of cover, because my plan here is to have a lot of fish. Because the tank is relatively shallow, only 21 inches, I wanted to create somewhat of a lagoon style with softly curving sides enclosing an open central area. What I did here was the first attempt of the rocks right out of the box, and it didn't turn out too badly. But on some thought, it didn't really meet a couple of the objectives I had, and I forgot at first about the inch of sand. And here's where we go back in time. This is from July of 2020. This is when I started curing rocks to put in the new tank. I always knew I was going to cure them ahead of time, following Fish of Hex Travis's advice, because I really wanted to try and avoid the ugly stages at the very beginning, at least with the rocks. If you've been following my channel, you'll know that I had ugly sand, but not ugly rocks. So after 6 months in a tub of salt water with heat, flow, and in the dark, I moved them finally to the new house and put them in a new clean tub of salt water with some bacteria to continue their curing. I put them into this tote with the base rock I had already started curing. Ironically though, I didn't end up using any of that branch rock that had been curing since July. In addition to the main structure at the back of the tank, I wanted arches, and I found little rocks and little feet from two little fishies. These things were perfect to create what I needed. And to do the job right, I worked with something I've used twice before, eMarco 400 cement. This stuff is amazing, strong, and easy to use. This table was set up for most of the month of February while I worked on making all of my arches. I started with larger pieces for the base and then gradually reduced the size as I worked my way up. Each piece that was added was kind of cantilevered over the one below. I only did one layer at a time and then I let it dry, and I did my best to try and set them up so that gravity was holding them in place and not just cement. It worked out pretty well. The reason the styrofoam is here is only until the cement dries in case the table got jostled, because I didn't want them to fall over and break apart before the cement was solid. Here you can see they're standing up on their own, and I'm kind of experimenting with layout. I had a huge space to fill, and my original idea was that I was going to put clusters of these arches at various places throughout the middle of the tank in the open area. I thought I'd be able to put corals along all of the little ledges that I created going up the arches, and then maybe put something at the very top, or maybe put something on the sand in the middle. I had lots of ideas, but it didn't quite work out that way. Probably my favorite of all that I made is the left half of this one. Later on in the video, I'll show you how I used it. While I was working with the cement and doing the arches, I also finalized the back rock structure and cemented pieces together. One thing I learned from my Red Sea tank was that making the pieces modular made it much easier to handle things as the time came to put them into the tank. So I made sure that no more than 3 pieces of rock were all together in one piece. That made it a lot easier to move them. They also would have to spend about 6 months at least curing in a tub of salt water, and I wanted to be sure they were secure so that when I lifted them out, they would stay as I had originally made them. Before disassembly for going to the curing tubs, I took a Sharpie and made register marks along all of the places where there were joins. Then I took video of everything to help me later. By this time, we had a functioning sump, so it occurred to me it might be a good idea to put some of the rocks directly in here so that they could be seeded while they did their curing. I loved the barnacles I had in the Red Sea tank, so I bought more. Here I'm cleaning them up so that I can get these also into that sump section with the rocks so they too can be cured. After several thorough rinses with boiling water, here they are, nestled down among the rocks. Here's where I ended up putting the barnacles. This has become the empire of Chunk the Blenny. Fast forward to December of 2021. That's right, 9 months later, finally the tank is in the house and we've started to transfer water. It's time to start putting feet on all of the arches so that they can be moved up once there's enough water upstairs. Here they are in their curing tote where they've been since March. Once we had enough water upstairs to cover them, we moved them up into the tank. At this point, I was still planning to use them in pairs or in clusters of 3. The water that's in this tank came from the system downstairs. So because there's now rock in here, there will be biological processes going on. To handle that, we set up a canister filter and a heater and power heads to keep the water heated, circulating, and filtered while we were adding rocks, and until the plumbing actually got hooked up that would join the upstairs tank to the downstairs sump. That wasn't going to be for quite a while yet. Remember that inch of sand, and remember how I was cementing rocks together? Well, something I should have done at that time was cement the feet under the rocks to raise them up off the bottom to allow for that inch of sand. The reason it was important was that I calculated the height of the space under the rocks to allow for big fish. An inch was going to make a difference, and I wanted to be sure there was the maximum available. So I decided to try at this point to put feet under the main pieces of rock, under the modules that were going to contact the bottom. Also bearing in mind that by this time, after months in the sump, this rock is live, so I didn't want it out of the water any longer than necessary. Once the feet were securely on there, it was going to go back and wait until we could take it upstairs. Yeah, it was a dismal failure. It really did not work. I got my husband to come and help and gave it another try, but it didn't work. I think it was because I was using putty, And the putty doesn't stick very well to wet surfaces, as I've learned. I really should have done this with cement way back at the beginning before I was so short on time with having this rock out of the water. Well, we moved some rocks in here last night, and this morning I see we have a hitchhiker. This little guy. Cool, because I don't know if you can really see it, but there is definitely an algae film starting on the glass. So I'll have to get out my giant Flipper Max float and get to work on it, but I'll leave some for the snail. Looks like he's doing a good job. Look at him go. I had 3 tubs and a 40-gallon Brute trash can full of rocks curing. The rocks we took upstairs already came out of here, and we put some back in here from the trash can. So the idea is to try and empty that trash can today. We're going to move a few more rocks upstairs. These ones that are a little darker in color have been here longer, so we'll take those up and put them in the tank and replace them with more from the trash can. There aren't that many left in here. We should be able to get it right empty today. Yep, everything's out of there now. At this stage, the goal is to get the rocks up here into the tank. Some of them are kind of where they should be, but most of them are simply here. Our friend the snail sure is getting around. Wait a minute. There are 2 snails. Ha! Once we got to this point, I waited a little while to allow for the rocks in the sump to get at least a little bit seasoned. The ones at the back spent quite a lot of time in the sump. The arches at the front didn't. They were only in the rock totes, and you can see the difference. So I'm hoping things will even out if I wait a little longer. Signs of life on one of the rocks that we put in here. Snail is still working away. Okay, I think I'm gonna have to feed this tank now. Oh boy. That's a big one too. Well, yeah, so here's where I try and figure out where everything goes. That's the left side. The right side is rotated, but I'm not sure I'll leave it that way. Maybe we'll see. This capstone bridges these 2. This capstone bridges the middle, and the other rock that went back in the thing is out front. Oh yeah, some rocks moved out of here. We're working on the aquascape. Still have to do some stabilizing. And we still need to add feet under all these big pieces of rock. Might be some changes yet, and there's lots more to add out front here, but yeah. You've probably noticed the water level is still low in this tank. We did that deliberately because we figured, why have that extra 6 or 8 inches of water to deal with when we're lowering the rocks down to the bottom? It just made it so much simpler and easier to see. Ultimately, what I did to move the rocks with the feet on was assemble them on egg crate. That way, once everything was put together, I would lift it up, carry it upstairs, and set the whole thing right down into the water. That way the putty could cure in place, and then once everything was solid, I simply had to remove the egg crate. This is the middle structure that sits right in the center of the tank. Making progress now. Stage 2 of the aquascape. We did some more putty work at the back here and created some supports right there they don't really hold the two pieces together. Basically, they just stop, the putty there just stops the upper rock from tilting. Water's quite hazy still, probably because the putty is still hanging around. But I'm pretty excited about how it's developing. Not the way I thought it was gonna look. This front right corner has pieces of arches I won't be using. What I ended up doing was using single pieces and making them look as if they support the upper rocks. I took half of the arches and put them up against the outer ring of rocks, and I gotta say, I really like how it looks. There are caves, overhangs, swim-throughs. This rock, I think, is getting diatoms, which is good. So yeah, it's, you know, it's a process. Wow, I think this is a baby Trocus snail. Check it out. It's very tiny. So here's the final version. From the time the first rock went in until the time the sand went in was probably 5 or 6 weeks. Ultimately, I ended up with probably 3/4 of the arches that I made that I didn't use. They're down in the sump. I'm keeping them seated because you never know. I promised to show you what I did with my favorite arch, and here it is. I made a lovely little Euphyllia garden. It's facing the opposite way that it was in the photograph, but you get the idea. If you enjoyed the video, why not give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel for more. Thanks so much for watching. Stay safe, everybody.